Hey, good morning, guys. I just want to do a quick rip around APAC and EMEA. We'll try to keep it to 10 or 15 minutes if we can. Firstly, in my neck of the woods, Southeast Asia, though Thailand's been trying to lead a recovery and basically trying to get its tourism sector reignited, it has a lot of conflict between the health department, the tourist department, the prime minister's department, and the COVID safety department, or the committee that makes all the decisions, where the prime minister has to run everything past the CCSA, which of course he also chairs, which is a classic, as it gives him a couple of days to look at the political fallout internally, particularly from the health department, and then decide if he wishes to further delay. Now, Thailand's announced on the 1st of November it's going to open up. What it hasn't announced is, does that mean you no longer have to fill in a certificate of entry? What does it mean in terms of when you arrive, you have to do your test, but do you wait at the airport? I'm not sure that it's going to be a 2 or 3 hour process like it may be, say, in somewhere really efficient like Singapore. Therefore, do you have to go to a hotel authorized by the government called an SH Plus? Can you go to your own residence? So there's a lot of unknowns. The policies and the decision to move forward hasn't really been supported with the detail. Just flashing over to Indonesia very quickly. Obviously, Chinese ships have been making incursions into what they believe is the South China Sea, what Indonesia believes is the Natuna Sea, and what the International Maritime Courts clearly have stated is not a Chinese territory. China standing by its view, despite the International Maritime Court finding that if it fished there 1,000 years ago, it rightfully belongs to China. And of course, from their perspective, ignoring everyone else's perspective, including Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, you end up with the Australian, United Kingdom and America linking up, and nuclear submarines. So we're getting a real escalation into Asia. Uday, have you got anything you'd like to add to that? Obviously, there's some domestic implications with elections coming up in Indonesia 2024, a history of anti-Chinese sentiment, which is way beyond that's resulted in a lot of violence. But you've got Luhut potentially being very close to the Chinese. He may or may not have realized that. What's your read on that?
Yeah, Paul, that's a very interesting dynamic, I think, domestically. So, on an official level, Indonesia's response has been muted by Indonesia and China's economic relationship because a lot of the investment flowing into Indonesia for some of the major projects, such as the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, is Chinese. But as you mentioned, there is a very strong anti-Chinese sentiment, and there are already indications that um, opposition to China is being politicized ahead of the 2024 elections. Now, the Islamist parties will obviously use it, but others will also kind of get into this because Indonesia is a very nationalistic country. And if I remember correctly, the former fisheries minister, she used to blow up Vietnamese and Chinese fishing boats, and she was very popular. Since then, Indonesia has taken a softer stance against China. So I think Indonesia is being dragged into this China versus the West dynamic here. It's trying to play both sides, but in time, let's see how it goes. I
Yeah,
think the risk
thanks.
profile in the Natuna Sea and South China Sea is increasing.
Yeah, thanks, Uday. And of course, look, in Southeast Asia, obviously subscribe or become a member, but fundamentally there's a lot happening. 30 odd soldiers died in a clash with the People's Defence Force in Myanmar. We've had PD Freeport Indonesia open up a smelter in Gresik, East Java, capable of processing 1.7 million tonnes of copper. The TNI, the Indonesian National Armed Forces, conducting an investigation for a person who went missing after coming into their custody in Sugapa and in Tanjaya in Papua, which is a known hot zone, which has been managed notoriously poorly by the government and by the security forces. 20 people were arrested in connections with some violence that broke out yesterday in Makassar, which is a southern end of Sulawesi, known as Ujung Pandang amongst Westerners. So there's a lot happening. But Uday, over to you. Let's cover off on the rest of the
All right,
massive two regions.
let's switch over to South Asia, India specifically. So authorities claim to have foiled a terror attack in Delhi. This comes days after authorities went on alert. So this shows how the threat of terrorism in India is higher during the festive season because There are large crowds, and there's rising polarization and religious tensions in the country. And interestingly enough, Al Qaeda released another statement recently, and they voiced support for a free Kashmir. So you can see
Yep.
how India is kind of getting the threat of terrorism maybe increasing in India because of the developments in Afghanistan, which may have a negative impact on India's security environment. Now, if I could just switch over to Afghanistan quickly here. Afghanistan is seemingly heading towards a humanitarian crisis and economic collapse. The EU just pledged over 800 million USD. They had pledged some money before, and the group of 20 countries also said that they would send aid. Now, this is a very crucial time for the Taliban. They have to prove that, they can govern and administer a country and not just mount a successful insurgency. And one of the major threats they're facing is the Islamic State. The UK embassy and the US embassy warned of potential attacks in Kabul recently. And while the Taliban has said the Islamic State is a headache and not a threat, the way it's going, it seems to be more of a bad migraine at the very least, and it's likely to get worse. And that has a knock-on effect on security dynamics across South Asia and the wider region. I think that's it from me, Paul.
Thank you. Just a few more thoughts there. I mean, there seems to be some kind of resistance growing within Afghanistan, apparently being sheltered by the ethnic rivals in Tajikistan. Do you see that being a threat to Taliban regime in Kabul? I don't see that to be a threat, but it does add to the complexity with IS being involved, then Al Qaeda being bolstered by their ideological allies in Taliban. Do you see the resistance adding to the headache which Taliban already has?
It definitely adds to that, Bhargav. It definitely adds to that. But at this point, the resistance from the ethnic Tajik groups are quite small. But in time, if the Taliban fails to prove that it can govern the country, there might be more of this manifesting across different ethnic groups, and that could be, a trigger point or something that we have to keep an eye out for. That will show a greater state of instability with time.
All right, all right. And there also seems to be some drama going on between Afghanistan and Pakistan, despite the alleged links between the intelligence agency ISI in Pakistan and Taliban. I heard something about Afghan airlines being blocked for Pakistan International Airways. Do you see that as a major threat? I don't. I see it as a mere drama to show to the world that they're not in cahoots.
Yeah, I think you're completely right over there. I think the West especially has overstated the links between the Pakistan and the Taliban. And right now what's going on is Pakistan had closed the border, one of the border crossings with Afghanistan, and a lot of Afghan trade got held up at the border. And they also increased price tickets for their airlines. So Afghanistan has gone and now blocked one Pakistani airline. So there seems to be some political developments going on, but I don't think it would be a major threat at this moment. I think they're still trying to negotiate and figure things out. Now, one key dynamic here is the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. Pakistan wants assurances from the Afghan Taliban that they will not allow the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban, to attack Pakistan using Afghanistan. Due to the Taliban's very decentralized governance and the way the organization is made up, I think it's very hard for them to kind of give a reassurance that, our elements or our linked elements will not be attacking Pakistan. So it's a complicated dynamic, Bhargav, and it's not as simple as Pakistan supports the Taliban as
I must agree there. I guess there is a mullah logic in between as well. I mean, two mullah groups, TTP as well as Taliban, use their own logic. So who knows what the equation is behind the curtains. Okay, moving over to Middle East. Basil, can you please bring us up to speed on the Iraq election?
Yes, thank you, Bhargav. So one major development from the EMEA region, especially the Middle East, is the conclusion of the elections in Iraq. the Shia Muslim cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, which has the Sadrist movement, won the majority bloc in recent elections. The parliamentary elections were held on October 10. The turnout was fairly low comparing to 2018. The turnout was 41% compared to 44% in 2018. However, the Sadrist movement won 73 seats of the 329 seats in the parliament, which marks a huge turnout for the Sadrist movement. Their closest rival was the Sunni speaker Muhammad al-Halbousi's Taqaddum coalition, which won 38 seats only. The significant thing and the unexpected turnout was the failure of the pro-Iranian Fatah alliance to reclaim their 48 seats in 2018. They only won 14 seats and they have rejected the election result. And it's expected that they will probably keep rejecting the election result and file a complaint and file an appeal to the court. So that was for the parliamentary elections in Iraq. However, it was significant that no terrorism linked problems happened during the election compared to what happened in 2018.
That is a very positive sign that terror groups have not taken advantage of the chaos which ensues during or after elections. But at the same time, it was also interesting that the Shia faction allegedly backed by Iran haven't managed to hold on to their support base, I guess. Now, Basil, if you were to move on to Africa, what other issues do you see propping up?
One of the issues that are actually heating up is in Mali. Mali have been having tensions with France over the alleged Wagner Group contract. So the tension started when the Malian government wanted to hire Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group in order to help the country to fight terrorism. They have also accused France and its French Barkhane force, the special ops in Mali, of training terrorists and terrorist-linked groups in some areas in northern Mali, that they banned the Malian army from entering those areas. So the tensions now come as the French Barkhane force left the Kidal base, which is also in northern Mali, and gave it or handed it over to the United States multidimensional stabilization mission in Mali, which is called the MINUSMA.
All right. Okay. Do you have any other issues you can talk about in Africa? Are there any bandit attacks in DRC?
Yes, there are quite significant several bandit attacks in Nigeria, in DRC, and in Burkina Faso. One of the attacks was in DRC. Armed bandits attacked several villages in the South Kivu province. They kidnapped around 21 people. Actually, this is recurrent in sub-Saharan Africa, especially in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and especially in Nigeria, in the Kaduna, Zamfara, and Katsina states.
All right. So bandit issue as well as the terror groups seem to be a never-ending story in Africa. Moving on to Europe, there seems to be a few mundane issues popping up. Apparently, in recent times, environmentalist groups led by the likes of Greenpeace have been on the upswing. And very recently, Greenpeace activists were at it again, protesting in front of Orano, French state-controlled firm which deals with nuclear materials, for their alleged involvement in exporting uranium to Russia. I mean, the environmentalist groups have taken the mantle in the recent past, mainly because of the elections which happened in Germany. However, we need to keep a close eye on their activities. If it becomes a little too belligerent, it may disrupt operations, business operations in some of these key transport hubs, such as London, Paris, or even Berlin for that matter. Speaking of disruptions, we can't really look beyond far right in terms of political landscape across Europe. and the far-right party, Forza Nuovo, seems to be a concern for the Italian authorities as well. They seem to have blocked their websites and their presence on the internet, especially after their protests against the country's strict COVID-19 rules earlier this month. And in England, the football fans do not seem to be worried about COVID-19 at all. They seem to have clashed very recently because of a football match between Hungary and England for a World Cup qualifier. I guess that's a Monday news for the Brits. Paul, do you have any inputs on any of these issues?
No, mate, let's wind it up, shall we?
Certainly, Paul. Thank you.